Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to not only an American expert, but a global authority on trade issues in the WTO, the gentleman from California, the chairman of the Rules Committee, Mr. Dreyer, for such time as he may consume.
That's kind of a frightening introduction, but I hope it didn't offend Mr. Paul here. Let me thank my friend for yielding and rise, first of all, to compliment my friend Ron Paul. He clearly shares my view that we need to do everything that we possibly can to diminish barriers that allow for the free flow of goods and services throughout the world. In fact, he and I were discussing this issue yesterday, and we both agreed that we very much want to diminish those barriers. I wish that there were not a single tariff that existed in the world, because we all know that a tariff is a tax, and we as Republicans were born to cut taxes. If you go back to 1947 and look at the establishment of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, it came following the Second World War, and we all know that protectionism played a role in exacerbating both the Great Depression and, I believe, and most economists agree, strengthening the hand of Adolf Hitler. So following the defeat of Nazism in the mid-1940s, we saw world leaders come together and establish the GATT. They had one simple goal they put forward. What was it? To decrease tariff barriers. So with that as a goal, the GATT worked for years and years and years, decades, in an attempt to bring down those barriers through a wide range of agreements. And as my friend from New York pointed out very well in his statement, we today have the World Trade Organization. 5 years ago it was established, and it was established again with the continuation of that goal of trying to decrease tariff barriers. There are now 135 nations that belong to the World Trade Organization, and I'm not going to stand here and argue that the World Trade Organization is the panacea to all the ailments of society. I'm not going to say that there aren't problems within the WTO, and I know that my friend from Houston will clearly point those out. But I am one who's concluded that we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul, for 5 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, it is true that I believe in low tariffs because it's low taxes. When we had that problem facing us at the time of the Constitutional Convention, we were able to correct that problem in one sentence. No tariff barriers between the states, and it's been very successful. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a very complex treaty, an illegal treaty, an unconstitutional treaty. This is the size of the treaty. This is the size of the agreement. This has nothing to do with trying to reduce taxes. Matter of fact, when this was passed, the thought was, and the statement made on the House floor was, of course, it would lower taxes. And that I would support. But the truth is, there was an offset for every tax that was lowered. Even in NAFTA, one gentleman told me that he immediately benefited from NAFTA because the tariff barriers went down. But you know what happened? There was a reclassification. His tax went back on because he was a little guy. But the big guys got the benefits. So there's something very unfair about the system. It is an unconstitutional approach to managing trade. We cannot transfer the power to manage trade from the Congress. The Constitution is explicit. Congress shall have the power to regulate foreign commerce. You can't deliver that authority. Delivering that authority to the WTO is like the president delivering the authority to the speaker and say to the speaker, you know, I'm busy, I want you to be the commander-in-chief. You can't do that. And we cannot give up our responsibilities here in the House and deliver it to a very complex treaty arrangement. Now, even if we had passed this treaty, it wouldn't be legal because you can't amend the Constitution with a treaty. And that's essentially what is happening here. What is happening here is the people have lost control, and they know it. And that's why the people are speaking out. They're frustrated with us, but they're going to the streets. That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign that we're not representing the people. We're representing the special interests. Why is it the chairman of the board of Chiquita Banana decides in the last 3 years to give $1.6 million to the politicians? Because he will have access to the trade commissioner for us, the U.S. Trade Commissioner. Because now it's not us who will vote, but it will be the non-elected officials who will fight the battles in an unelected international bureaucracy, the WTO, which acts in secrecy. There's something wrong with that. We only have a chance every 5 years to debate this issue. The original bill allows for 20 hours of debate. That is the importance of the issue. That is what was thought to be. Realizing how difficult that would be and the odds against that happening, I was quite willing to say, well, at least give us 2 hours. 2 hours of debate. But that's not enough, because this is a much more important issue than that. I know the opposition, those who believe in international managed trade through the World Trade Organization, would not like to have this debate. Because I think deep down inside they know there's something wrong with it. I think that they don't want to hear the opposition. And I am absolutely convinced that truth is on our side, that we will win the debate, disregarding the vote. But we have a greater responsibility here than just to count the votes. We have a responsibility to try our best to follow the law of the land, which is the Constitution. And we do not have the authority to transfer this power to an unelected bureaucrats at the WTO. The WTO has ruled against us that the foreign corporation tax is illegal, and we have promised by October 1st to rescind this tax benefit. And we will, and I'd like to know from the Ways and Means Committee when that's going to happen, how we're going to do it, because it's going to be a $4 billion increase on our taxes. And this will be passed on to the people. At the same time, they are preparing to file a case against the WTO to put a tax on international sales.
The gentleman's recognized 1 additional minute.
Thank you very much. In Europe, there's a tax on international sales. If you buy software over the internet, you are charged a sales tax. They said they will absolutely not reduce that tax. In America, we don't have that tax, which is wonderful. So the Europeans, what would the logical thing be if you can transfer value over the internet? They buy their software from us. That is good. So they refuse to lower their taxes. They're going to the WTO to get a ruling. Well, maybe they'll rule against us. That'll be called a tax subsidy. And what will we do? We are obligated. We are obligated under the rules to accommodate and change our laws. We have made that promise. And some will say, oh no, we still have our sovereignty. We don't have to do it. What happens? Then they go to the WTO and they manage a trade war. They permit. This is a continual, perpetual trade war managed by the WTO, something we need to seriously consider. Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired.